Hello, good evening. Shalom. Okay, so we are going to embark into a special journey, a musical journey with the music of the Haggadah. There's a lot to tell about this, so I guess we just start. Let me share the screen with you. I need to share the screen, please. Thank you.
You can share the screen. Anat.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to hear a lot of music. Hold on. Yes. Okay. All right. So before we listen to some musical samples, let me give you a short overview about the music we expect to hear in the Haggadah. So first of all, we need to understand the structure of the Haggadah that actually invites us to set music to certain parts. So first of all, there are two major parts of the Haggadah. The first one is the liturgical part, and the second one is the non-liturgical part. The first one is a fixed ritual, Kadesh, Uchatz, etc., etc. And we have the Magid part in the middle, the mandatory text that tells the story of Passover. And then at the end, towards the end, after the meal, after Birkat HaMazon, after Hallel, we have the non-liturgical part, which is not mandatory. And there we find the classical piyutim, such as Adir Hu, Karev Yom, etc. And also folk songs like Echad Gadya and Echad Mi Yodea. So as we take a look, the functions, different functions of the Seder, and if we think about how to adjust songs or music to each function, so let's take a look. So the major goal of the Haggadah is an active remembrance of the Passover story. So we have different ways to do that. We have a ritual, Kadesh, Uchatz, etc., order of actions. We have special foods. But look at these three categories here. Acknowledgement of the miracle. We have a song like Vehi She'amda and Hallel. So Hallel, for example, is a part of the Haggadah in which we actually import music. Hallel is usually is a prayer from the synagogue, from the practice of the synagogue. So what people do for Hallel, they actually import music from the synagogue into their homes. So this is a very interesting exchange of music from outside to the family environment. Also, in the Seder, we engage the children. So we have we have game songs, question songs, Manishtana, and also the fun songs at the end, the accumulative songs like Chad Gadya. And also we have all kinds of songs that invite us to sing together, like Dayenu. There are a number of piyutim in the Seder that have a verse that repeats all the time, such as in Dayenu, that invites people to sing along. So let's take a look at an overview of the Haggadah. Most of the text, the mandatory text in the Haggadah, is recited in what we call a study mode, and this is common for most of the traditions, both Ashkenazi and non-Ashkenazi. What is a study mode? A study mode is a type of music, a music formula that people use when they study, mostly for Talmud study. So since the Haggadah, the Magid part, is constructed in such a way, it's a storytelling, but there are also some Talmudic-like sections, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Akiva, etc., etc. So the study mode is used here. So let me introduce to you the study mode, the Ashkenazi study mode. This is a heavy file, so it's going to take a few seconds before it uploads. Okay, I apologize for that. Here. It will start in a second.
הריני מוחד ומסור לקיים המצווה לספר בציאת מצרים, לשם גיהות בריאו ושכינתה לדי תור ונאו שם כל ישראל. הלחמן ידך לו אבתנה בארץ מצרים, כל דיר וייתי ויכול, כל דיץ וייצא ויגזר, השטח לשנה הבאה בארץ ישראל. השטח לשנה הבאה בני חורים.
So what we hear in this recitation is usually there's a tone, a note that repeats often. We call it the recitation tones. So it goes like the ta 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 ta. This is the recitation tone, ta 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 ta, etc., etc. And we find it common in many traditions. So let's take a look. This is the prayer, this recitation mode, the study mode, written in musical notes. This is from Baal Tfilah by Avraham Ber. He was a chazan in Berlin in the late 19th century, and he actually he transcribed the music he heard or used in the synagogue and put it in a very large compilation. And what you can see here, you see all these notes. Even if you cannot read music, you can still see that these notes, for example, repeat all the time. So for example, this is halachman, yeah. And here for manishtana, we see a similar pattern. So again, havadim ainu, etc., etc. You see this repeated notes, and we hear them. So let's see how it works for manishtana, for example. We'll hear first the Ashkenazi version of this use of study mode. We will hear Cantor Eliyahu Schleifer, Professor Eliyahu Schleifer, ethnomusicologist, Jewish music professor, and he combines Yiddish and Hebrew together.
נוסח מורכב, עברית ויידיש. Tate Leben, ich will dich fragen, die 4 Kasches. Man nicht da noch, was ist verändert geworden, Halailo Hazeh, die Nacht von Pesach, Mikol Haleilois, von alle Nacht von a ganz Jahr. Die erste Kasche ist, שבכל הלילויס, alle Nacht von a ganz Jahr, onu ichlin, essen mir, Chometz und Matzo, oi mir willen es mir Chometz, oi mir willen es mir Matzo. Halailo hazeh, die Nacht von Pesach, kuloi Matzo, essen mir nur Matzo. Die zweite Kasche ist, שבכל הלילויס, alle Nacht von a ganz Jahr, onu ichlin, essen mir, שאור ירוקויס, anderes od greens. הלילה הזה, die Nacht von Pesach, morgen, essen mir bitte greens. Die dritte Kasche ist, שבכל הלילויס, alle Nacht von a ganz Jahr, ein onu matbilin, tinken mir nicht ein, afilu pamechos, afilu einmal euch nicht. Halailo hazeh, die Nacht von Pesach, shetei ve'omin, tinken mir ein, 2-mal, einmal Karpas in Salzwasser und einmal Moror in Charoises. Die 4. Kasche ist, שבכל הלילויס, alle Nacht von a ganz Jahr, und Euchlin essen mir, ben Joishvin sei sitzendig, und wen Mesubin und sei angelehnt. Halailo Hazeh, die Nacht von Pesach, Kulonu Mesubin, sitzen mir alle angelegt auf die linke Seite. Tate Leben, ich hab dich gefragt, die für Kasches, entfer mir a Teretz.
So I think you could all hear this repeated note. Let's now hear another version, this time Iraqi or Syrian version, something different.
من اشتنى هالليلة هالزيم كل هالليلوت شبخول هالليلوت هنا نحن مطبلين أفلو بعم أحد بهالليلة هالزي شتبعاميم شبخول هالليلوت אנחנו אוכלים חמץ או מצה והלילה הזה כולו מצה שבכל הלילות אנחנו אוכלים שאר ירקות והלילה הזה מרור שבכל הלילות אנחנו אוכלים ושותים בין יושבין ובין מסובין והלילה הזה כולנו מסובין.
What we hear here in this case is a repetition of the same formula again and again and again and again. And this is what happens all throughout the Haggadah in all traditions, that there's a repetition of a formula in order to overcome this large amount of words, a lot of text. Before I continue, I would like to thank my colleagues and friends at the National Library in Jerusalem, the music department, for providing me with these wonderful musical samples. So thank you, Amalia. This is something a bit different. This is a Yemenite tradition, something that is parallel to Manishtana. This is a song which the children sing in the Seder. Actually, this song is about, it's the story of Passover. And what they, I'm sorry, I don't have a transliteration in English or translation, but actually what they ask here is, Ma inyan halayla ze mikol halilot? What is what ma nishtana halayla ze? In other words, why are we making such a big deal out of this night? So they don't sing it in Hebrew, they sing it in Yemenite, in Arabic, Hebrew Arabic, and we will hear the children now reciting this. It's a very interesting piece. Again, it's a very heavy file. I will need a few seconds for you to start playing.
מה חבר هذا الليلة בלשון ערבי תימני שהוא קיצור כל ההגדה.
ما خبر هذا الليلة من جميع الليالي خرجوا جدودنا وآباءنا من مصر بيت العبودية ما كانوا يفعلوا كانوا يخلطوا التبن في اللبن واللبن في التبن لمن لفرعاء الرشاء الجمر الذي راس الصمور وفمه سعمناقة النور وأورد الله على المصريون الدم والضفادع والقمل والقمال والوحوش والوباء والجراد والبراد والظلام أمة الأبكار حتى عجوز بجوز عليه ألف لعنة تجوز كان معها معبود من عجنه دخل الكلب كلها وصرخت صركة عظيمة في تلك الليلة وكان صراخ عظيم بمصر لقيم ما شنا مر كي ان بايث عشر ان شممت وغرقوا المصريون في بحر القلزم وخرجوا بني إسرائيل من وسطه وخلصهم الله بيد شديدة وذراع ممدودة وأحكام عظيمة وآيات براهين على يد موسى ربنا وعلوها الشلم وهذا الجواب.
As you can see here,
عظيم هاين ولا.
This is something new. So as you can see that again, there's a certain musical formula that repeats all the time, the same thing over and over again. Now, you remember the Manishtana, the Ashkenazi Manishtana we heard before? Manishtana laila ze mikol halelot, shebechol halelot chametz umatzah. So there's a legend, I would say, maybe, that Gershwin, George Gershwin, the great Jewish composer, when he composed Porgy and Bess, he used some musical formulas, some from the Jewish prayer, and incorporated them into this opera. The most famous example is It Ain't Necessarily So, that is based on the blessing over the Torah. So this is also, I would say, an example. It's just an assumption, but perhaps, I don't know. Let's see. Let's hear. So the formula, the original version is da 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 na 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 na. So let's hear from Porgy and Bess and try to trace this small musical formula. Oh, I'm sorry. Now,
morning time and evening time and summertime and winter time.
Morning time and evening time, and summertime and winter time. Bess, you got your man.
So morning time, da 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 da. Again, this might be or not. Okay, so what about the most famous tune we all sing? So this song is attributed to Ephraim Avilea, an Israeli composer. He was born in the Russian Empire, emigrated to Palestine. And the story tells that he composed this song for a play, for Passover. And since then, it became so popular. And actually, most people don't even know that they regard this song as a folk song, not necessarily with a certain composer. So what we say, this is very common actually, especially with holiday song here in Israel, because the Zionist movement tried to create a new tradition, and many holiday songs were composed and became Israeli classics. And many times, nobody really think that people relate to this song as traditionals. Actually, these songs had composers. So this is a very interesting journey about different about the path of a tune. So if we look at this tune, this famous tune, again, we see traces of this traditional mode, this traditional with the repeated notes, and then it gets wider with a wider range and it's more developed. But the very beginning, the formula, this musical formula, is based on the study mode of that we just heard before. Ma nishtana layla hazeh, etc. Okay, let's take a look at different songs now. Dayenu. Dayenu is a piyut. It's a very early piyut from the type of litany. Litany is a piyut in which there is a verse and then a word or number of words that repeat after each verse. So this is the case of Dayenu. This structure actually invites a call and response form. Let's listen to a few samples. Let's start with the Yemenite version. Again, you will hear the whole family engaged, into singing. Okay, we'll take it a few seconds before.
נהגו להגביה את השולחן כשהמסובים עונים דיינו. אילו הסיענו ממצרים ולא עושבוהם שפוטין. דיינו. אילו עושבוהם שפוטין ולא עושבין באלוהיהם. صاد بلهام وله رغث بخرهم داينو إله رغث بخرهم وله نوفن لونو أثمامنهم
And now let's listen to a Hasidic tradition. We're going to hear these two versions. One is traditional Hasidic, and then the famous tune that we all know. So the second one that I just sang is also traditional or Hasidic. We don't know who the composer is.
דיינו, אילו נתן את התורה, ולא יכניסם לארץ ישראל. דיינו, אילו יכניסם לארץ ישראל, ולא גמר בזה בחייה. דיינו, אילו נתן לנו את התורה, נתן לנו דיינו, דיינו, דיינו.
Again, well, the first tune was a type of recitation. Let's hear it again. Just the first one.
דיינו, אילו נתן את התורה, ולא יכניסם לארץ ישראל. דיינו, אילו יכניסם לארץ ישראל, ולא גמר בזה בחייה. דיינו, אילו נתן לנו.
You hear the repeated note all the time. Okay. This will bring I mentioned just a while ago about Manishtana, the invented tradition for Passover. So the best example for that is the Seder in the kibbutzim, which is a real invented tradition. In the kibbutzim, what they used to do is to create a new Haggadah, which is based on the ideology of the kibbutzim, the revival of the land, letting go of the tradition and the religious tradition, and forming a life of the new Jew, the chalutz, the pioneer. In the Haggadah, and there are a number of changes. The first one is that they incorporated songs, say modern songs, songs by Bialik, for example, song by Rachel HaMeshoreret, and more. So modern texts and modern melodies into the Haggadah. They also put more emphasis on Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, and the element of springtime, agricultural elements, more than religious traditional elements. But the most important thing I think is, if you remember, in the traditional Haggadah, Moses, the figure of Moses, is not mentioned at all. They in this Haggadah of the kibbutzim, they brought Moses back in, and they tell the story in a more elaborated way, as it is told in the Bible. So Moses is back, spring, and modern Israeli or Hebrew songs. And it was done, the Seder was usually, it was, say, more of a concert with a choir and a small musical ensemble. And it also engaged the whole kibbutz. The whole kibbutz would gather in the dining hall. And some pieces, some musical pieces, it would be like a play with some recitation, some storytelling in words, in speaking, and music. And sometimes it would just go back and forth to speaking and singing, speaking and singing. We will see that in a second. And also the whole community was engaged in the singing. The person we see here is Yehuda Sharet. He was a composer, a musician and composer at Kibbutz Yagur. Kibbutz Yagur was a pioneer, in forming this type of musical tradition. See how much that, yes.
Yeah,
so okay, wonderful. This is just enough for us. So let's hear Hayom Atem Yotzim B'Chodesh Aviv, performed. It's a reconstruction of this Seder in Kibbutz Yagur. Thank you.
Thank you, Anat. That was fantastic. A little bit of Ashkenazic, a little bit of Iraqi, a little bit of Yemenite, and even the Seder of the Kibbutzim. Toda rabah.